All right, welcome everyone to our AMA. I'm Connor, and I'm joined again by five of our core developers here at the association. We have Degan, Dylan, Ollie, and Siggy back for round two. Today, we're going to be talking about our focus for 2026. We have some key updates around upcoming releases, like the Chronicle release, and we're answering questions straight from our community. So thank you everyone that did submit questions, and hopefully we can keep doing more of these as we continue through the year. I just want to start with the big picture. We've seen a ton of interest online about what our priorities are for 2026. So with Teranode out there in the world, Siggy, what is our focus for 2026 and how has that evolved from last year?
Well, for Teranode specifically, we're moving out of the lab into the real world. We've been testing over the last year, actually, with towel mining. Gorilla Pool announced that they've forked the node and they're now also using it, mining on BSV. But like a lot of the testing that's come out over the last year is there's always improvements that can be made, performance things, little bugs. It's a massive piece of software. So it's all about nurturing what we've now created. We've been testing on Terra Testnet as well. It's been extremely valuable. Thank you for everybody that's doing that, because that's helped us a lot. One little thing that I want to mention, I think Terra Testnet has grown a little bit big. I think some people are complaining that there's too many resources needed for that. We were just playing around with lots of transactions, build things up. There's a lot of memory needed to process some of the blocks there, but it is less than SV node, because we also have an SV node. It's still more efficient than SV node. This is what we need to nurture. So the next year is all about working together with the miners, making sure that it's doing everything correctly, trying to get this out there and just to harden the hell out of it.
Over the last year, we saw probably the most profound shift that I've witnessed in sort of attention and interest with respect to the software that we've been developing. Every developer that sees it is engaging with it, using it, and finding out that you can actually sort of vibe code apps that use this framework very quickly. So getting an idea off the ground has just become extraordinarily easy in comparison to previous years, which I'm really proud of. I think there was a lot of hard work effort by many people that went into making it much easier for onboarding new developers. So what 2026 represents for me is much like what Siggy mentioned, hardening things. We did a security review that we completed, something like 24 different security related issues within the core SDK. Those were all addressed in the most recent release, but we have wallet toolbox functionality, not just in TypeScript, but in Golang and Python as well, coming through the pipeline. But what that means is you're not going to have just a small part of the ecosystem that has BRC 100 wallet interface capabilities, but it's going to start expanding into where people have perhaps been in the AI space with Python usage, or in this sort of infrastructure service areas with Golang, have more performant components that can do concurrency a little bit better, have more throughput TX wise. That's what we're aiming for at the service layer. And in terms of the sort of ecosystem capabilities, focusing more on, well, how do we do the peer-to-peer stuff better? So the data is actually, if possible, going directly from my computer to your computer and so on, using those kind of mechanisms that exist in the world. In previous years, we had this fantasy of the IPv6 multicast world existing, like just being real about it. It's not there yet. ISPs are not going to support that stuff. In the meantime, we still want to be doing this peer-to-peer connectivity. So 2026 is going to be about making those things a little clearer in terms of what you can do today to make peer-to-peer communications, transactions, and applications that are based on the BRC 100 spec.
Great. The next question here, maybe a good follow-up. It covers transaction volume on BSV. What concrete factors actually trigger sustained large-scale on-chain transaction growth on BSV? And which of those are now in place or actively being built?
We can create lots of transactions if we want. We should be less interested in that. We should be more interested in actual businesses using the chain for something valuable besides just those transactions, the transaction fees. And that is reflected in a transaction growth. And I think there is some interesting projects in the pipeline that are coming up that we can't talk about just yet, but hopefully very, very soon. There's massive opportunities for things, especially in the second and third world, where people don't have access to banks, but also for this, what Darren just mentioned, is peer-to-peer. So we're going to be working with parties that are actually doing that and want to set up these decentralized peer-to-peer exchanges of value and communication, etc. We're still working with these parties to set this up, to plan it out. I think that is the answer you have to get from me for now.
The peer-to-peer interactions, one of the things that's happening in the TypeScript SDK, after some workshops, we found that people are still not quite clear on like, how do you do payments? So just defining a standard way to do that speeds up the process, so that if you want some sort of payments app, then there's like a predefined default way to do that. We were kind of missing that this past year. So that's something that we'll have this year that's going to help increase the number of transactions on chain, just by making it easier to make these payment style apps.
What I've seen from the outside looking in is the technology stack is so much more mature than it has been for the last number of years. And on top of the tools available now, we can start creating things that can push transactions on chain a lot easier and faster.
Definitely. Yeah. If you take a look at metanetapps.com, for example, there's a new feature, like a feature that was just added so easily because all the infrastructure is already there to support it. By making it easier to build new features like that, you're increasing the number of transactions that get created because it's just simpler to do it that way these days.
Moving on here, there's a lot of buzz about our new software update, the Chronicle release, and maybe some of the key information behind it. Can you explain the Chronicle update, why it was needed, and the key dates developers should know about, including its mainnet launch? Honestly, it started right after Genesis in February of 2020. The Chronicle update is basically just the final bits and pieces of the original protocol that we wanted to finish restoring, on top of removing some additional restrictions that were added by both the core development group and some of the early Bitcoin Cash development groups. So what we've done is done our very best to revert all of that functionality back to its original state when Satoshi released it in 2009, with a couple of caveats in the name of stability. Given that there's been all these changes over the last number of years, and that with Genesis, we were very clear that we wanted protocol stability. There's a couple of design decisions that were made just in the interest of ensuring that all of the new Chronicle functionality is inherently opt-in by developers or applications or wallets. So what we didn't want to do is release this update and force any existing applications to update, because that seemed to go against our philosophy of protocol stability. There's further restoration of the original opcodes. There's a whole list you can look at. And then there's also a bunch of restrictions related to transaction malleability that are being removed. So a lot of guardrailing was put into the protocol to prevent any source of transaction malleability from entering a transaction. We've removed all that functionality for developers so that they can not have to worry about transaction malleability. As far as why it was needed, it's our job as the association to allow developers to build unburdened by restrictions. When we enabled Genesis, we also had no idea what developers were going to do with the new rule set, the original rule set with the original opcodes, right? In the same way, from an economics perspective, central planning limits the innovation and inherent prosperity of an economy. Centrally planning how developers use the protocol means that we might be stifling innovation. We might be stifling new use cases. Why it's needed is just to continue our philosophy of restoring that original protocol and also getting out of the way of developers. And finally, key dates. So right now, Chronicle is live on testnet. I encourage everybody to go and play. April 7th is when it will activate on mainnet.
We've been very careful about implementing the script evaluation in Teranode. So the SV node and Teranode are actually using the same script interpreter and literal code. So Chronicle will also be immediately available in Teranode together with SV node.
It's SV node 1.2 that supports it, and it's Teranode 0.13 that supports it, because those have the right activation heights. But you can use the Chronicle stuff on Terra testnet and the testnet networks on both SV node and Teranode as long as you're running the latest version.
And one of the questions that was asked was, can you explain the mandatory upgrade behind Chronicle? Doesn't this upgrade go against the idea that BSV is a decentralized fixed protocol blockchain that won't invalidate the existing products developers create? So I just want to maybe reiterate the statement I made, which is that was basically a core design decision of Chronicle to not cause any problems to existing products or wallets. By definition, you need to either use the new Chronicle SIG hash flag if you want to change the digest algorithm that's being used, for instance, and you also need to opt in by using a transaction version greater than 1. So by default, all wallets and applications right now just use transaction version 1. If you decide to alter the transaction version to anything else, you will automatically opt into the Chronicle rule set. So specifically around those transaction malleability restrictions that I mentioned. So if you don't want to be affected by any of this and you're like, I don't care about Chronicle, I like everything the way it is, then you can just keep using no SIG hash flag for Chronicle and keep your transaction version set to 1, and everything is all good. We have a mandate on the association side to restore and lock the original protocol in the same way that Satoshi, when he released the protocol, designed everything into it so that it could cover all of these existing use cases and complex use cases. We exist to finish that mission of restoring the protocol and also keeping it fixed and ensuring that it doesn't change any further, and that the association isn't adding other crazy protocol changes like inflating the coin supply or doing other crazy things.
I want to double underline the you don't have to do anything part. Like this is not going to break your stuff. All the SDKs at the moment do not have Chronicle stuff merged into them yet. Everything will still work. It's just extra features, new controls that you can put in place. That's all like extra features. It's not going to break anything.
Bunch of thanks goes to existing developers in this space because they helped us really refine what Chronicle ended up looking like, keeping those ideas of stability in mind. Okay, so moving on to Teranode and delving into some of the architecture choices behind it. We had a question from John Calhoun who asked, who came up with the subtrees solution? Very impressive.
I'd actually like to talk a little bit about some innovations that happen because of it, because it is a very interesting solution that provides a lot of extra features. The SV node peer-to-peer layer, it's very closed. The Teranode layer is much more open. You can listen in on all the messages that all of them are passing on to each other. One of those messages are the subtrees. In Teranode, you can listen to the subtrees from the miners that mined the last X blocks. It's all cryptographically secured which miner actually sent that subtree and contains your transaction. There's a lot of these new features that will be popping up in various tools across the board. You can think of something like a confidence rating for your transaction. Has your transaction been picked up by a node that has mined one of the last 10 blocks? That kind of features can be added because of this. We are working on the next generation of Arc, named Arcade, which works on a pure Teranode layer, which listens to the subtrees. It uses that to determine the states. Like all of those states are determined by the subtrees coming in. Currently, it's in a very, very basic form, but I can definitely foresee some of these more advanced features being added and used because the subtrees basically provide an incremental view on the blocks being generated by the miners in the network.
A lot of people will want to claim that they came up with it. And I think the answer is a little bit more complicated than that because these things have been talked about for a long time in different ways. All of that fed into a decision that, as I remembered, I made, but that is building on top of the giants that came before, is that we're going to simplify it a lot and we're going to have all the subtrees be a power of 2. Whereby all the complexity about splitting up a block into multiple subtrees go away and becomes very, very simple. And that's what we did in Teranode. With any kind of innovation, there's a lot of inputs from a lot of different people that think about things differently. And in the end, the simplified solution of having all the transactions in a block split up by a power of 2. So for instance, the million TPS test, that is always a little bit over 1 million subtree sizes, and then you're having 600 million per block per 10 minutes. It just makes the processing a lot easier.
We had a question about BSV multicast. So Hoon Jun 75255 asks, currently BSV multicast is running. So is it registered in AWS?
There is no like BSV multicast. There is IPv6 multicast support. This question comes up all the time, and I think there's like a little bit of a misconception as to what support for IPv6 multicast actually means. The question really is, does the ISP that you're using support it? And for 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. None of the ISPs actually support it. And the reason for it's actually kind of interesting into like where BSV fits in to enabling multicast at a public global layer. There's a giant like financial problem with supporting multicast at the ISP layer. The example that I've always really liked is that it's like a radio station. So you have one broadcaster, but a bunch of receivers, right? And charging for that is not very obvious to the ISP, right? So the ISP basically has to route this data to a bunch of different receivers, and it doesn't always know who those receivers are at sending time. So the idea that a IPv6 packet could contain payment to the ISP for what you're actually trying to accomplish with it, like in this case, multicast, I think is really the solution moving forward. But that's like a whole different social technical problem to solve than it is, does BSV support multicast? Yes, as long as your infrastructure supports multicast, you can use it today with the BSV blockchain for transaction broadcasting.
I think that makes sense, right? There's just a lot of support we need from ISPs that isn't there yet. These next few questions are going to relate to how developers can integrate with the BSV ecosystem. So the first two are from John Calhoun. The first one asks, how do the Go SDKs compare to TypeScript in terms of reliability and maintenance? Parentheses, middleware, wallet toolbox, etc.
So in terms of maintenance, middleware-wise, there's a separate package, Go middleware, you should check out, that reflects the same functionality as the TypeScript equivalents for auth and payment middleware. In terms of maintenance, we have developers working on TypeScript, we have different developers working on Go, and we're trying to keep them in sync all the time. Obviously, innovation happens wherever it happens, and we try to sync that innovation across the SDK, so there's similar functionality everywhere. In terms of stability, things are going well in Go just now, and that is supported by adoption from companies in the ecosystem that have commercial applications they're building on top of the Go SDK, Go Wallet Toolbox. So we're heavily in development with those components today.
The Go SDK and parts of it are used by Teranode. So Teranode can accelerate and will help with a lot of those development. So the Go SDK and the Go ecosystem is already growing just by us continuing to develop on Teranode as well.
Exactly. The overlays as well have been built on the Go SDK. Lots of infrastructure is being built on the service layer in Go because it's more performant.
Our Rust SDKs on the roadmap, Cloudflare worker compatibility would be fire.
Oh, interesting. I'll take a look into that. Thanks for the note. Rust SDK was on the roadmap maybe a year ago. It was like a question mark. The answer was no eventually. And that really is down to we simply don't have the kind of budget necessary to spread it that thinly across more languages. So we hit the top 3 ones. Rust is literally the next on the list. So do shout on social media and tag relevant people, and we'd be happy to take a look at that to get a Rust SDK done, because I know there are others that want the same thing.
Or build it yourself. That would be awesome.
Crystal VXN asks, can you share upcoming dev tools and updates?
Updates, at least for the SDKs, is a 2.0 version of the TypeScript SDK, which will be reflected in Go and Python as well. It's the incorporation of all the security review material. We also have payments-focused functionality in the TypeScript V2 release coming out, as well as, of course, the Chronicle release functionality, which will be in TypeScript, Go, and Python. One thing that's top of mind is connectivity to Teranode, actually. So the arcade functional component is something that we just worked on at the end of last year, and we still have some work to do there. But I think, if you spin it up today, it will work. It will connect to Teranodes on the network of your choosing, and it will be used for transaction propagation to Teranode infrastructures, and has an Arc-like interface for applications. In terms of tools, the LLM training guides, so you can point your agents to document a sort of compacted all of the information about how to use a wallet client, which I think will help application developers produce things more quickly.
This next question is about encrypting data on chain. Bitcoin SVCOL asks, is there a library that encrypts data within the transactions so that only the owner can view it, and the encryption changes when the data is transferred? I think this could be done by rewriting an NFT, but I don't know the details of how to code it.
The short answer is yes, but it's a combination of tools and libraries, right? So to get started with this, I don't know, my recommendation would be learning OneSat ordinals and then using the TypeScript SDK. Those 2 libraries have all of the tools that you would need to accomplish that goal. I think describing how to do that is probably outside of the scope of this Q&A, but unless someone else wants to get more into the nitty-gritty of that, but those 2 tools was how I would do it, at least.
So in terms of re-encrypting stuff for the next person along, you can make use of the encrypt method of the BRC interface on wallet client, and all you would do is set the counterparty to the other person's identity key, and then what that will do is derive a symmetric key that will allow you to encrypt for them only So they would decrypt and then re-encrypt to the next person. That's kind of passing along the data that could only be decrypted by the person you're targeting.
So it's actually built into the tools now. So maybe this is an interesting one for a little demo that we create and how to do that, to demonstrate that.
I'll put it in demo.
Okay, so Darren's going to do it. He's going to make a demo in 2 seconds here. To wrap up, let's just run through another quick lightning round. We have Webbed Toad asks, can I build an app that'll put my status, trust, LLC, etc. on chain to be managed by a future agent that I assign?
I think the answer is yes. Like Darren said, most of the stuff that you need to build anything like this is already in the libraries and in the toolbox. And so we're working hard on creating demos. It's on the hub, it's hub.bsvblockchain.org. There's a lot of documentation there. There's also a section about demos where we're trying to put actual code out there that's open source that you can just take and use in your own application to do this stuff. All the primitives are there. And so we're trying to build more and more of the Lego blocks to build something that demonstrate, but in the end, you'll have to do the application yourself.
The application you need to build yourself. But if you talk about like agents perspective, that's where MCP tooling and stuff comes in. And it doesn't exist at the moment. But for example, internally, we have an MCP tool that can interact with the Teranode. It's very easy. Once you have an application with an API, you can create an MCP for it, which you can integrate into your workflow. Once all of those tools are in place, then that agent can interact, create transaction, broadcast transaction, whatever it needs to do based on the libraries and the application. So a lot of these MCPs, they need to be rolled out so the agents can work with the tooling and the APIs and the interfaces that we've built.
Next one, Paul Draw 733023345 asks, has anyone thought about creating a unique personal digital ID / KYC security wallet that 1 can verify it as you on any site, and 2, it holds all of your work and personal login password keys? Google offers a remember password or password generator, but this is held on Google.
That is essentially what the BRC 100 standard does. So what you're talking about there is encapsulated in BSV desktop or BSV browser, which is the mobile equivalent. The credentials you're talking about are held as things we call certificates. They're held by the user storage. And then every website that you want to reveal those credentials to, there are mechanisms in the SDK and middleware that check those things sort of automatically. So when you visit a website that has this stuff integrated, you kind of are logged in already. The website can just call your local wallet and you're in. We're working with the team at Yours Wallet to get that functionality built into the browser extension as well. So it should be ubiquitous, so that you can just build the app once and it just works with all the ecosystem wallets.
Most of our demos work like that as well. So trying this on a computer, you start at the Meta desktop and refresh, or click a button. You'll be immediately logged in. There's no login, anything like that. You recognize it's just sorted. So it's very, very transparent and nice.
Last question. Familiar face Daniel Street asks, why is BSV.com not registered? It's the equivalent of the Solana Foundation not purchasing Solana.com. I'm going to answer that probably because it costs a lot of money. That's my guess.
He should have bought it before raising this question, and then he could have sold it to us at any price.
I am here in DC, so I'm seeing the different resources available across the different blockchains. The budget that is available is tens of millions of dollars. Our technology is, I think, so much better than everything else out there. But because of the world of cryptocurrency, a lot of these other foundations and associations, they have a very, very, very large budget to do a bunch of stuff like buying a domain that maybe isn't necessary to buy. But I think we're doing a great job with what we have. It's just a matter of maybe putting that into perspective. Maybe just following along the topic of Washington, D.C. So there's a bill that passed the House called the Clarity Act, which is attempting to define like a regulatory framework for digital assets. I've been involved in both the past public policy efforts, but also the current ones. And what we saw was the last minute polling of support by the major industry players for what that Senate bill is looking like. What's been really interesting, we've had a lot of meetings where we're really hammering home the data use case for blockchain. All of the policymakers have really only heard the financial use case. It's been really interesting to show them in person data use case for blockchain. And they all go, oh yeah, I heard that it can do this. I just didn't know anyone was actually doing this. A lot of those applications never matured enough because of scalability limitations to then go into a policymaker's room and show them. It's been really great. Darren was with us on a trip a month or two ago. He spun up demos really quickly because the tools are so great. to show data integrity use case of blockchain, right? So just putting public data on a blockchain and being able to show auditability and tamper resistance of that data. But there's all sorts of other use cases that we've like really raised a bunch of eyebrows with. That's a wrap on our AMA. So guys, thank you, Darren, Dylan, Siggy, Ollie. And also thanks to everyone that submitted all these questions. Doing more of this on a more regular basis, I think gets you guys involved, gets us involved in answering your question. This is going to sound cheesy. I think this is the year of adoption. It's never been easier to build anything. It's never been easier to just do things in general. Like tools that are available if you really want to do something or build something are unbelievable right now. And so our focus here is to enable both builders and also ourselves with our own efforts to get the technology into the hands of developers, businesses. This is also the year of regulation, especially here in the US. And so helping policymakers understand the use case of a large scalable public blockchain is also really important for this year. So if you want to build with us, whether it's a proof of concept, and just get in touch via our website, social medias, and we can get together and see what's possible. And until then, we will see you all next time.